Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress as I'm recording this video on the 23rd of March 2021. It's only 27 days till the resumption of the 2020-2021 Candidates Tournament. As a famous sports broadcaster once said, the sense of anticipation is almost unbearable, but we have to wait a while longer. This Candidates Tournament is the 29th in the history of the official and undisputed World Championship, and on Chess to Impress we're counting down towards the resumption of the tournament by looking at the first 28 candidate cycles in the history of the World Championship. And this is episode number 21. These are the 8 players that will do battle in Yekaterinburg in the second half of the Candidates Tournament, which was cut short in March 2020 because of the corona pandemic. Clockwise from the top left, Fabiano Caruana, Dingli Ren, Alexander Grishuk, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Kirill Alexeyenko, Wang Hao, Anish Giri and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And halfway the tournament, these are the standings. Vachier-Lagrave and Nepomniachtchi are leading the event with +2, followed by 4 players on 50%, Caruana, Giri, Wang Hao and Grishuk. Ding and Alexeyenko have -2 and they need a miracle to become Magnus Carlsen's next challenger. As mentioned, we're counting down by looking at the earlier candidates tournaments and matches in the history of the World Championship. It all started in London 1883, where Zukertort and Steinitz finished in the first 2 places of that tournament, and they played the first official World Championship match 3 years later. Steinitz gained the right for a rematch against world champion Emanuel Lasker in St. Petersburg 1895-1896. Paul Keres qualified for a match against world champion Aljechin in Netherlands in 1938, but he never got a match because of World War II interfering. David Bronstein qualified to play world champion Botvinnik in Budapest and Moscow 1950, and Vasily Smyslov won 2 candidate cycles in 1953 and 1956. Misha Tal won in Yugoslavia 1959. It was his turn to challenge Botvinnik for the world title, and Petrosyan was Botvinnik's next challenger. Boris Spassky also won 2 candidate cycles in 1965 and 1968, and Bobby Fischer beat Tigran Petrosyan in Buenos Aires 1971 to qualify for the match of the century against Spassky the year after. Karpov beat Korchnoi in Moscow 1974. He qualified to play Fischer. Fischer didn't play, and Karpov became the 12th world champion by default. Viktor Korchnoi won the next 2 cycles, and both times lost to Karpov in the World Championship match. Kasparov came on the scene in 1984, and he beat Karpov 1 year later to become the 13th world champion. Karpov came back, won 2 cycles. In total, he played 5 matches with Kasparov. Short won the cycle in 1993. It was his turn to play Kasparov, and in 1995 it was Anand's turn. Alexei Shirov beat Vladimir Kramnik in Cazorla in 1998. It was his turn to challenge Kasparov, but he never got a match. Kramnik did and became the 14th world champion 2 years later. Dortmund 2002 was won by Peter Leko. It is in red there because this video is about that cycle. And Aronyan, Gelfand, Grishuk and Leko qualified in Elisa 2007 for the World Championship tournament, won by Anand. Topalov, Gelfand and Carlsen were Anand's next 3 challengers. Carlsen beat Anand, who came back by winning Khanty-Mansiysk 2014 for the rematch against Carlsen. Karyakin and Caruana were Carlsen's last 2 challengers. Both of them only lost in a tiebreak. So who will it be? Yekaterinburg 2020-2021. You can tell me in the comments who you think will be Carlsen's next challenger. As mentioned, we're now going to look at that candidate cycle where Peter Leko qualified to challenge world champion Kramnik. And we have to talk about the Prague Agreement. Garry Kasparov's split from FIDE in 1993 resulted in 2 lines of world chess champions. That was the classical world champion, the title that passes on to a player only when he beats the previous world champion. This was held by Kasparov until he was defeated by Kramnik in the classical World Chess Championship in the year 2000. But there was also the official FIDE world champion. The split world champion title led to calls for a reunification. After negotiations, all parties agreed to the Prague Agreement, whereby the winner of this match who would be the classical world champion, would play the winner of a match between Kasparov and the FIDE world champion, and the winner would be the unified world champion. These other matches never took place, but the titles were later unified at the FIDE World Championship in 2006. That's a whole different story. Toilet Gate, you may remember that. In this cycle, the candidates tournament was held in July 2002 and was won by Peter Leko. However, there were many delays in finding a sponsor for the Kramnik-Leko match, and it was not played until September and October of 2004. The July 2002 Dortmund Sparkassen chess meeting acted as the candidates tournament to determine the challenger to Kramnik's title. However, not all other top-ranked players were present. World number 1, Garry Kasparov, declined his invitation, instead insisting that he deserved a rematch with Kramnik based on his tournament results in 2001. Two other top 10 players, world number 3 and 2000 FIDE world champion Vishwanathan Anand and world number 8 Vasily Ivanchuk, declined their invitations out of loyalty to the rival FIDE World Championship. And also FIDE World Champion Ruslan Ponomariov, world number 7, did not participate. Apart from these 4 players and Kramnik, the classical world champion, the competitors were the 7 highest rated players in the world, plus Christopher Lutz, 44th in the world in the January 2000 list as a player from the host country, Germany. Group 1 was won by Alexei Shirov, with Topalov also qualifying for the knockout stages. Gelfand and Lutz didn't qualify. From Group 2 it was Bareyev and Leko, with Adams and Morozevich missing out. Leko destroyed Shirov in the semi-finals and Topalov narrowly overcame Bareyev in a tiebreak. Leko then beat Topalov 2.5, 1.5 to qualify for the World Championship match against Vladimir Kramnik. Let's play some chess. In this video we're going to look at the third game from the Leko-Shirov match, the semi-finals of this cycle. It is the 15th of July 2002. White is Alexei Shirov with a rating of 26.97 and black is Peter Leko with a rating of 27.22. We know that Leko ultimately qualified, so let's look at the game from his perspective, from the black side. Leko was 1.5 against half a point up in this match, which was over 4 games, so Shirov had to quickly win a game. I'm using Leko's own comments from the magazine New in Chess, where Leko analyzes this game. Shirov opened with the e-pawn, and Leko writes, "This was Shirov's last white game in our match, so he needed to win at any cost. Exactly for this reason, my trainer told me to be prepared for an all-or-nothing fight." And Leko chose to play the Sicilian. Knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5, avoiding the Pelican Sicilian, says Leko. The Pelican would come on the board after d4, c takes, knight f6, knight c3, and then e5. Shirov wanted to avoid that line. So on the third move, he played bishop b5 instead. g6. Shirov took on c6, and you can take back with the b-pawn. This has been played before in Grandmaster games, but more popular at Grandmaster level is to take with the d-pawn, which was what Leko did. d3, bishop g7. Let's put the moves on the board. Both players are developing their pieces. b6, queen d2, striking in the center with e5, bishop h6, queen d6, and on the 11th move, Shirov castled queenside. Leko writes, white has reached his aim of castling queenside in hopes of a complicated battle. Opposite side castling always is a recipe for an exciting fight. Here Leko played a7, a5, and he gives that move an exclamation mark. He writes, I felt happy too, because in this position black also has chances. Surprisingly enough, the plan I used in this game is absolutely new, but it looks very logical. Push the queenside pawns as quickly as possible, not giving white time to develop his attack. Looks very logical. Shirov took on g7, king takes, g4. He starts his attack. a4 on the other side of the board, knight e2, b5, knight c3, and b4. And Leko writes, finally my opponent started to think at this moment. Queen g5 was played, and Leko says this is based more on a solid concept than on a crushing attack. But it's very hard to organize an attack against the black king anyway. And that solid concept is to bring the queen closer to black's king. Rook e8 from Leko and knight d2. And Leko writes, white has stopped the break move b4, b3, but black also has some other ideas. He played a3 instead. And now Shirov played a move which surprised Leko. He took on a3. This game is a big surprise. White is playing with fire, but I understand why Shirov had rejected the more natural b2, b3, keeping lines closed. And he gives this line because then he would have played queen d4, knight c4, and h6. Leko says there is no need for any queen a1 check or things like that. The queen is attacked on g5, goes to e3 in this line that Leko gives, and then bishop a6 because white now cannot maintain his better pawn structure. Leko continues the line with knight e2, attacking the black queen, and then you have to swap. F takes. Leko says this is necessary, but here black has a very nice ending, while white is quite powerless. He also points out that instead of f takes e3, you cannot take with the knight, because then, if you want to look for yourself, what is the refutation of knight takes e3? It looks logical, but it drops a pawn. Knight takes e4 is now possible, because if the d pawn recaptures, the knight on e2 is unprotected. So back to the game, we had played e3 and we just saw a line that Leko gave in New in Chess magazine starting with b3. In the game, Shirov took on a3, a surprising move. Leko kicked a white queen, and now he writes that knight c4 counterattacking the black queen is not possible because of queen d4, and now white has to save his own queen, queen a1 check, king d2, queen c3 check, king e2, and bishop e6 with lovely compensation for the pawn that black is down. White won a pawn here on a3, if you remember. So that after h6 and then knight c4 counter-attacking black's queen. In the game, Shirov did not like that variation and he played his queen back to e3. Bishop e6. Leko writes, a nice classical reaction. White's queenside weaknesses will not run away. And this is very instructive play and commentary from Leko completing his development instead of getting the pawn back straight away. Knight b3, attacking c5 with both knight and queen. And Leko writes, now it may seem that white is safe, but I had prepared a nasty surprise, which was rook takes a3, and then after queen takes c5, Leko played queen b8, and he gave himself another exclamation mark. And he writes a very important finesse, from now on black's attack walks alone. And I think Leko means that white is not able to launch an attack himself on the black king. King b2, what else, writes Leko. Otherwise, black's attack will crash through, starting with rook takes a2. So king b2 was played, knight d7 from Leko, attacking the queen, queen back to e3, knight b6, and rook a1. And Leko says, this is a very sad move to make, but there was nothing else. And Leko shows a few variations proving that black's attack is quicker than white's, so Shirov had no choice but to try and slow down black on the queen side. But rook a1 is not a move you want to make. We can understand that. And now Leko played a very strong move c6, c5, and he writes, it's a lovely feeling to make such a move. This pawn is breaking down the last defenses. Here Shirov played king c1. Taking on c5 is not possible. If you take with the knight, there is knight c4 check, and that is a fork. You cannot take that knight because then the queen is hanging, the d pawn was pinned, and instead of king c1, you can also not take with the queen on c5 because then we have a fork straight away. Knight a4 check wins the queen. So king c1 was Shirov's 25th move. Leko pushes that c pawn, c4, d takes, knight takes, attacking the queen, and Leko writes, this knight controls everything. Shirov saves his queen, and queen a7. Leko writes, the time has come to force matters. Shirov took on b4, Leko took on f2, and here Shirov played knight f5 check, and Leko writes, this is Shirov's last chance, but white is hopeless in any case. It's a piece sacrifice, Leko took it, g takes f5, and rook c8. Black is not worried about losing that bishop. He has a decisive attack. Shirov took the piece, and now knight e3. Leko writes, going for a direct mate, and white threw in the towel. There's a mate threat on c2, and here Shirov resigned. And Leko says, after king b2, all moves are winning, but there is a nice one that I calculated during the game. This did not come on the board. Shirov resigned after knight e3, but after king b2, Leko had planned queen takes c2 check. You have to take that rook, rook a8 check. You have to interpose the queen, and now look at this move. Queen c2 to c3, double exclamation mark. What a move that is, a quiet move to close the mating net. If you take the rook, there is knight c2 check, king a4, and checkmate. What a game from the Hungarian Grandmaster Peter Leko. The last game of the match was not played because after this game, Leko was leading 2.5 versus half a point in a 4-game match. The match was over. Leko had qualified for the candidates final, in which he defeated Veselin Topalov, and then Leko had to wait another 2 years to get his World Championship match against Vladimir Kramnik in the autumn of 2004. This match was held in Brissago in Switzerland, and I covered that match in the build-up to the last World Championship match between Carlsen and Caruana, where I covered all World Championship matches in the history of the official and undisputed World Championship. The link to the video on the 2004 Kramnik-Leko match is up here. I hope you enjoyed this game and that you'll keep counting down towards the resumption of the 2021 Candidates Tournament with me. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.